So what we're looking at here, this is a 3/4 inch videotape recorder that's all in pieces in my junk room here. And this uses these monstrous cassettes, and we've got a mechanism that's gummed up here. For one, it won't eject the tape unless I push on a lever somewhere. I forget where it was. Anyway, we're going to try and free up this mechanism. I can see there's mechanical levers in here. And what goes wrong with these things, like if, for example, if I fast forward, it fast forwards. But if I push rewind, nothing happens unless I push that lever. And then it starts to rewind. So what we've got wrong with this thing here is the mechanism is gummed up. And I'm in very limited space where I'm working. This is not the normal work area that I work in. This is a storage unit that I'm working in right now, which makes things a little more difficult because I don't have my normal tools, I don't have my test equipment, and I have very limited resources available to me in a very limited space. But we're going to try and get this thing to operate here so that I can get this thing back together and put it back in service. But I'll show you how these things work because they're kind of neat. On a 3/4 inch machine, the head drum is large, and it's much larger than a VHS machine. The tape is actually wrapped all the way around. The playback heads are in here, and the audio head is down here. Anyway, I'll just put this thing through its paces, and it should thread up the tape, which it is. And that's it. The tape is now playing. Nope, now it is. Finally it loaded up. Now the tape is playing. When you press stop, same thing happens. Tape goes back into the cassette, just like that. I think part of the problem that's happened with this machine is that it's been sitting so long without being used that just the mechanical parts have gummed up on it. So anyway, we're going to see if we can get this thing working properly, and then I can get it off my bench and get it back in service. I actually have another one. I have another 3/4 inch recorder. This is just a playback machine. I have another recorder that's piled up under a pile of other junk that I got to dig out, but maybe at some point we'll overhaul that one too. But I'd like to get this one back together at least, so that I don't have to have it cluttering up my limited workspace here. I just want to make it rewind. This machine works fine. I just want to get the mechanism freed up here, get it unstuck so that it will rewind on its own and eject without having to start pushing levers and stuff. Yeah, take a look at the bottom of this thing. Hey, everything's driven by one motor. You get your main motor here. The main motor through a belt drives the head drum, and then there's a reduction pulley here, and this drives the capstan shaft. But everything is all driven by one AC synchronized motor. And how they control the speed of the head drum itself, the phase of the head drum, for example, so that the heads are on the correct video track, is there's actually a magnetic brake that they can apply, and it will slow the head drum down slightly, so they can control the speed of it by applying a magnetic force basically to another motor which is mounted on the other side of this drum, and they can slow the thing down ever so slightly to allow you to track your video tracks. This is how all the old original machines worked, and when I do my old SL 7600 Betamax teardown, I'll be showing that as well. It's very similar to this design here. It's probably pretty hard to see, but Right down there is where you'll see a big C-clip. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right down inside here, I'll try and point it out. There's a pivot point right down here. See, right where my screwdriver is. I don't know if you can see that or not, but right there is the pivot point that's activated, and the lubricant has dried up in it, therefore preventing it from going into rewind. Now I know technically this stuff here is not, you would normally not think of this as a lubricant. It's control cleaner, neutral. Cleans and lubricates moving parts, safe on most plastics. You don't want to get on rubber parts because obviously it's going to make them slip. But basically the active ingredients of Neutral, there's some solvents in it, and it has light lubricating oil. When you have a mechanism that's a bit gummy, especially you don't want to tear the entire mechanism all apart and take all the little pieces out and put them all back together, and you can't get in there with conventional oil, sometimes this will work. It's kind of like WD-40, and yeah, it works wonders. But this will clean controls too. A little bit, not much. So we just give that a little shot down on that post. Now when I put the tape in and I press rewind, the tape rewinds. Stop, stops, fast forward, fast forwards, play, machine threads up and goes into play. A little slow doing that too, so I may have to give another shot to some of the other parts that are getting kind of gummy. Only thing I got to fix now is the eject. Still a bit sticky. I have to flip out a little lever by hand. Oh, see, that came out on its own too, so maybe that's working. Might all be related. Just a couple little sticking pieces, and we go into play. Stop. Wait for the standby to go out. And we'll, oh, there we go. It's even ejecting now. So problem's almost completely solved. I'm going to lubricate a few more of the parts that may stick inside this thing, and then I think we can put this one to bed and put it all back together, get it out of my hair, and move on to something else. So to recap, I'm going to try and get the camera off here and film what we actually did on this thing, because it's hard to see from this angle. Basically inside the mechanism, if I can point the thing out, it's tough to see, but there's a little, right down here, there's a little post that the mechanism was anchored to, and it basically, when you put it in rewind, if I push the lever by hand here, I don't know if you can see it moving down there or not, but see the mechanism moving? Right on the main post that hinges on, the lubricant on it had dried up, was preventing it from, it was sticking, so it couldn't go into rewind mode. And that's all that was wrong with this old machine. Now this machine is from back in the 1970s and it still works, so that's why I preserve it, because every once in a while I do get a 3/4 inch tape that somebody wants to put onto a DVD. There's not a lot of 3/4 inch machines still around that are working. It's a pretty obsolete format, so I'm happy to be able to keep this thing running, even though I maybe only use it once a year. It's nice to have it for when the need arises. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, what the heck do I have on a 3/4 inch tape? I have this tape here, and I have no idea what's on this tape. So it just says Vancouver Cable 10. So this was from Vancouver Cable TV before they were taken over by Rogers, which was before they were taken over by Shaw. Now that this thing's working, let's just take a look and see what's on this tape, shall we? So we got this thing going here. The motor comes on, the drum kicks in, and Here's the TV. It's probably a public service announcement of some type. Tracking control. Let's track it up. I don't think there'll be any copyright to worry about on this.
And you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best.
Oh, Rick Hansen.
But it's been the worst all the way through in terms of demands physically. There's been days when I've been hurting real bad, and it's been really tough just to try and get out of bed.
For those who don't know who Rick Hansen is, Rick Hansen circled the globe in a wheelchair to raise money for spinal cord research. So this was a video about his Man in Motion World Tour, and yeah, this is kind of a neat video to find here. I had to kill the sound here because they started playing music, and well, that would certainly violate YouTube's copyright policy.
Today, she is.
So this is a community TV show that I've got here from from the early I would say the early '80s, playing on this machine that is even older than that. But that's pretty incredible. We've got a tape here that that was made probably back in the late '70s. I don't know if there's a date on this thing or not, but yeah, it's got this ancient old machine here, and it works. Stop. And if anybody didn't notice, the tape actually runs backwards. It runs from right to left. So these units are just ridiculous how they go in. You basically have to lift the chassis, which the chassis weighs about 60 pounds out of the wooden case. Not like the consumer equipment that made it for easy service. No, these ones here weren't the easiest things to get apart. But generally you didn't have to take them apart that often. They were really built well. Looks like this one was serviced once. Looks like the last time this thing was serviced was 1984. So it was serviced 30 years ago. So that gives you an idea how old this thing is. This thing's probably 40 years old. If anybody knows, it's a model VP1000 Sony. And I don't think there's any dates on this thing here. But it was a real wood cabinet though. Anyway, that's a VP1000 tear down and lubricate sticking mechanical parts. We're going to get the top on this thing now and get it all back together and do a final test before putting it back into storage. Just so that the next time I use it, it will be broken again. Guaranteed. Okay, we've got this machine back together. We'll put this tape back in it and press play. Standby light lights up as it's threading. When the tape finishes threading, we have a picture. Tracking control. Well, might help if I put it in manual tracking. There we go.
When I left from the project, we knew it was going to be tough, and you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best. But it's been the worst all the way through in terms of demands physically. There's been days when I've been hurting real bad, and it's been really tough.
What happened? We put it together and it doesn't work. I guess we're taking it apart again. It appears that my tracking control is not working. So I have a sneaking suspicion that when I put the unit back into the wooden cabinet, I caught this little test point here, and it cracked the circuit board underneath. Look, you can see it moving. I have a feeling that the trace that goes around here is damaged, and it's interrupting the signal. I believe this is the B board. This is the servo, I think. I don't have any drawings for this thing, so I'm kind of guessing, but we're going to jumper that and see whether that solves the problem on here. I was waiting for the soldering iron to warm up, and maybe, hopefully, that will solve the problem, and I'll have my 3/4 inch machine working again, because I did put a lot of effort into fixing it. I know the video was relatively short, but the amount of time I spent actually finding that fault with the mechanism was fairly substantial, so I hate to have to scrap it because I buggered it up putting it together, but I think that's probably the problem right there. we're going to fix that up, and hopefully that'll solve the problem with it. Well, there was a time when I used to believe that the smallest piece of wire was always the one you wanted to use, but I don't follow that philosophy anymore. When you look at the length of some of these other jumper wires that are in place, I don't think a little extra piece of wire here is going to make much difference, other than make it easier to find a repair that's been done. So I just replaced a jumper wire. The trace from here, if you follow it up, the trace goes up to the test point, and the trace comes down and goes right to there. You can see the trace goes to that test point, and then it goes right to this right here. That's the path of it. So I've replaced that broken trace. So now we'll plug this thing in and see if it works. If it does, be a little more careful putting it together this time. So once more, do you think I fixed it? Let's be the first to find out. There we go, spinning up the drum, and
Director of the acute spinal cord
oh, look at that.
At Shaughnessy Hospital.
I fixed it.
Very excited.
Tracking control here when I turn it. Now the tracking control works.
We feel the hope in this.
And auto tracking works. So that was the problem, is that when I was putting the thing together, I snagged this little test point here on the cabinet, and it busted the circuit board. So yeah, there you have it. You see, I really do know what I'm doing, from someone who spent over 20 years in the electronics business. Even when I'm thrown a piece of equipment that I've never seen before, and I never worked on broadcast gear, I only worked on consumer stuff. But once a repair engineer, always a repair engineer, and even without a schematic on this piece of equipment, I was able to figure this thing out without that much difficulty. I'm good with discrete components, this type of stuff. I love this type of stuff, discrete components. All the new stuff's all ICs, and you've got all your circuitry buried into one big LSI, and everything's all digital, so it's a lot more difficult now. Everything, you know, everything that occurs inside a chip, now you can test things out, test individual components on the old stuff. The new stuff, it's a whole new ball of wax. But anyway, there's my 3/4 inch U-matic is once again working, and I'm going to be a little more careful this time when I put it together, and we'll verify everything's working once I'm done. Looking at the cabinet here, I can see exactly what happened. I don't know if you can see it there. I'll grab my flashlight again. There's a piece of wood sticking out from the panel. See that? And I guess that, you can see how close the tabs are, right? The test points. I guess it got caught as I was putting the thing in. And this one's the same. There's one on this side. How you work on these things, how you lift them apart, is you actually, there's a tab here, you grab your fingers on here, and you grab your fingers under this tab here, and you lift the chassis out. Getting it into the cabinet, it is a relatively tight fit. Getting it into the cabinet without damaging, and as I've discovered, is you know, it's a little bit tedious, because there's not a lot of room. We're talking about 1/8 of an inch clearance on each side between the actual wooden cabinet and test points that are sticking out. So there's what happened. I'm going to screw this thing together, and then we'll give it one more test run before putting it back into storage, where it'll again sit until it breaks down. Okay, there's the unit back together. I haven't put the top cover on it yet. I'll put that on once I verify that it works. So we'll just pull the eject lever here. Load this rather large cassette back up and press the play button. Tape threads up, drum spins up,
Dr. Joseph Schweiger, Director of the acute spinal cord injury unit.
We have a picture.
We're very excited, and this is part.
So now we'll stop it. Verify that everything works. Let's rewind the tape. There, it's rewinding. There was actually a 3/4 inch machine, portable, that was made. That was almost the size of this thing. I mean, it was ridiculous. It weighed about 50 pounds. Can you imagine hauling around a 50-pound recorder on one shoulder and a camera that weighed equally as much on the other? But that's the vintage days of 3/4 inch videos. Hope you enjoyed my repair. And now that this thing's not going to clutter up my workbench anymore, I can move on to some other interesting things, like the Betamax machine that's over in the corner that I want to I know I said I was going to show you the operation of my old Betamax SL8600 machine. Unfortunately, it no longer functions. I hauled it out to see if it still worked. It worked when I packed it away, but like all old electronics, things just, you know, get old. Components fail, and this one no longer works. And as much as I debated whether I should actually overhaul the thing, I really don't have a need for a Betamax of this vintage or of the other one, which is even older than this, the Beta 1 machine. And the reason for that is that I do have much newer Betamax machines which are functional, which I use for tape copying over to digital. So as much as I was hoping that this old beast would work so I could show you guys how it worked, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. This one here is just too old, and I just haven't got the ambition to fix it. The 3/4 inch machine I just showed you, I had a reason for fixing that because it's the only one that I have, and I do get the odd 3/4 inch tape that needs to be transferred. This one here, I mean, it won't thread the tape. I tried forcing it to manually thread, and I got the tape threaded, but it won't work. It won't play. Nothing moves. I'll show you what the guts of this thing look like just for the hell of it, just so you can see what this thing looked like inside compared to what the 3/4 inch machine looks like. Betamax machines were strikingly similar to 3/4 inch. They had the head drum. On the Betamax machine, the erase head's over here, and the audio heads are down over on the side here. The tape actually goes from left to right. So the tape is pulled out from the left side of the cassette by an arm that pulls it out to here, threads it around the head drum, past the capstan and pinch roller, and then it goes around and comes back. And the guide's locked into this channel here, and this is the guide arm here. You can see here if I move it manually, you can see how the tape. So I have a feeling that the belt probably, maybe just the belt, that might be all that's wrong with it is the belt. But at this particular point, I'm going to say, nah, I'm going to take a pass on it. I'll kind of leave it sitting here on my bench because I'm in no hurry to move it. And if some future day I decide, you know what, I'm going to take this thing apart and see if it's just the belt, then maybe we'll see this old beast work. At least the electronics still pass a picture through the tuner on this one. The other one, I didn't even have a picture going through the tuner. Mechanism loaded up and everything, it rewound and fast forward. Okay, but there was no video at all. No video, no sound, and no pass through for the tuner. So it definitely has a problem. So anyway, that's the Betamax that I was going to show you. I was wishing it was going to work, but you know, maybe for a future project. But I hope you enjoyed the 3/4 inch look at the 3/4 inch machine and how we got that one going.